Hi everyone, in this video we are going to see about introduction to queues. So here are some of the topics which are going to cover in this lecture. The agenda is first we will see about what is queue, example of queue, characteristics of queue, types of queue, basic operations and applications of queue. So what is queue? Queue is a data structure that is used to store data in a particular order. It works by adding elements to the end of the queue and removing elements from the front. All the operations are performed in a first in first out order. And queue is a linear data structure like arrays and stack. Now let us see an example of a queue. Let us assume there is a ticket counter and all the people are arriving to the ticket counter in a linear order and everyone are following same queue. So in this video we can see that the person who enters a queue first will get the ticket first and leave the counter. So likewise in queue also the element which enters a queue first will leave the queue first. So this is a realistic example of a queue and this will help us to understand how the queue actually works. So now we can see the characteristics of a queue. A queue can handle multiple data. Here we can access both the ends and they are also fast and flexible. So now let us see the basic operations of queue. Some of the basic operations of queue are enqueue, dequeue, peak or front, rear, is full and is null. We can see these operations in detail in the coming lecture. First, let us assume there is a queue which contains elements from 2 to 8. So here rear is known as the last element, the position of the last entry in a queue. The one that is most recently added in a queue is called the rear of the queue. Likewise, here the 8 is the rear element. Front, the first entry that will be removed from the queue first is known as the front of the queue. Now let us see the enqueue operation in detail. So enqueue is nothing but it is an operation that adds an element at the end of the queue. So in order to perform enqueue, we must follow some steps. First step is to check if the queue is full. Obviously, if the queue is full and if there is no space to add an element, then we couldn't add the element. So in that case, we must return an overflow error and exit. So here we can see that a queue is empty, so we can add the element easily. So in this, the step 3 is if the queue is not full, increment the rear pointer to the next empty space and add the element to the queue location where the rear pointer is pointing. So we can see after adding element 3, the rear pointer is pointing to 3. And now if we add another element 4, the rear pointer points to 4. Likewise, when we add a new element, the rear pointer keeps on moving till it reaches the full space. Now we will see what is dequeue. Dequeue is an operation that is used to remove the first element from the queue. So in order to perform dequeue, we must follow some steps. The first step is to check if the queue is empty. Obviously, if a queue is empty, we cannot remove an element from a queue. Likewise, in this case, here all the elements are present in a queue and there is no empty space. So we can easily remove a element. So in step 3, we are going to remove the first element, that is 2. And after removing that, the front pointer keeps on moving and it points to the next available data element. So this is how the dequeue operation works. Now, what is rear operation? Rear is nothing but the last element. So, rear operation is used for printing the last element without removing it. In our case, 5 is the last element, so it returns 5 as an answer. Front operation. Front is nothing but it is a front element of the queue. So it returns the front element without removing it. In our case, 2 is the front element. Is empty and is full. Is empty is nothing but it is an operation to check whether a queue is empty or not. So this operation returns a boolean value. So if a queue is empty, it will return true, and if it is not empty, it will return false. And is full is an operation that is used to check whether a queue is full or not. So in our case, if the queue is full, it will return true, and if the queue is not full, it will return false. So now we will see what are the types of queue. First is input restricted queue. Input restricted queue is a simple queue that is used to take an element only from one end, but deletion can be done from any of the ends. That is, it can delete an element from the rear or as well as front. Output restricted queue. This is also a simple queue. In this type, the input can be taken from both the ends, but deletion can be done only at the one end. Circular queue. This is a special type of queue where the last position is connected to the first position. Here also, the operations are performed in a FIFO order. And double-ended queue. In double-ended queue, the insertion and deletion can be done from both the ends, and this is also a special type of queue. And last one is priority queue. The priority queue is a special queue where the elements are accessed based on priority assigned to them. So now let us see some of the applications of queue. Queues are used in printers to maintain the order of pages while printing. Applications like Swiggy and Zomato uses a queue for maintaining the food order status. And in a network, a queue is a device is used in devices such as router, switch and mail queue. So I hope you understood the topic of introduction to queues. Now let's check your understanding. Please do attend this quiz.